Invest with confidence.
Company H&R Block reports results later today, with the tax deadlines for companies coming up mid-month, and for most individuals, it's just over 5 weeks away. For people getting a refund this year, that money could come around the same time as a new pandemic relief check. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has more on the spending that implies.
Nearly 3/4 of people who get a tax refund say it's important to their finances, according to a new survey from creditcards.com. Low-income people in particular.
For low-income families, tax refunds can be the biggest single cash inflow of the year.
Rob Levy is with the nonprofit Financial Health Network. He says many people plan how they're going to spend their tax refund before they get it.
In many cases, they are using that to pay down debt that they may have incurred, or they may use that money to pay for things that they have pushed off.
Or build up savings. Many people use the first round of pandemic relief checks in similar ways, says Ted Rossman, an industry analyst at creditcards.com.
What we saw with the initial round of stimulus was a lot of savings and debt payoff.
But Rossman says retail sales popped in January when the second round of checks went out.
I think we're starting to see more of this pent-up demand unleashed on retail spending.
And he says there will likely be more of that with the next expected round of relief checks and with tax refunds. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
And the Paris-based group of economically advanced countries, the OECD, issued a forecast today saying the new U.S. stimulus package that appears to be on the way could boost American output by as much as 4% in its first year. Now, as the U.S. recovers, interest rates will trend up here, attracting more global investment, which has emerging market countries now worried that'll suck capital away from them. Our producers are Meredith Garrettson, Stephen Ryan, Daniel Shin, and Erica Soderstrom. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Nova Southeastern University, as Florida Public Media's longest regional business sponsor, NSU is proud to support public radio in Florida. Healthcare professionals are needed more than ever. You can learn more about NSU's healthcare programs at nova.edu/Jacksonville.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. A company's cell phone policy can protect your employees and your bottom line. Our distracted driving presentation for the workforce can help.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health reminds you that emergency care cannot be delayed. Our ERs are equipped to keep patients safe through rapid screening, separate treatment areas, detailed cleaning protocols, masks, and more. More details at covid19.baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's What's Happening. Hi, I'm Melissa Ross. And just ahead, hear from some of the biggest newsmakers in the community on First Coast Connect, where we discuss the issues and stories that affect your life all across the First Coast. We also ask for your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Engagement is what drives this show, so engage with us right now as we get started here in just a few minutes on First Coast Connect. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. A growing number of public health experts say the worst of the coronavirus pandemic may be over in the United States. NPR's Rob Stein has more.
Not every public health expert is ready to say the worst of the pandemic could be over for the U.S., but many are. Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci in an interview with NPR.
I think we are looking at a brighter future over the next several months. That's entirely conceivable and probably likely.
Now, this comes with three big caveats. If people don't let down their guard too soon, if the variants don't surge before enough people can get vaccinated, and if the vaccination campaign doesn't stumble badly. But if all goes well, the number of people getting infected, sick, and dying could slowly but steadily continue to decline. Rob Stein, NPR News.
The House is expected to take up the revised coronavirus relief package today, worth nearly $2 trillion. The measure passed the House last week, but was altered and passed by the Senate over the weekend. That means the House needs to vote on it again. Democrats hope to pass it and get it to President Biden this week. The FBI has arrested more people in connection with the deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports one suspect is an alleged member of the far-right paramilitary group, the Oath Keepers.
Roberto Minuto was arrested Saturday in Newburgh, New York, where he owns a tattoo parlor. He faces 3 charges: obstructing an official proceeding, unlawful entry, and tampering with documents. Prosecutors say Minuto stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, along with the mob of Trump supporters, trying to disrupt the certification of the Electoral College vote. Court papers say Minuto can be seen on videos dressed in tactical gear as he taunts and berates police officers. Prosecutors also say Minuto served as a bodyguard when he was in Washington, D.C. News reports have documented Minuto working as security around January 6th for Roger Stone, the longtime friend of then-President Trump. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
4 pharmaceutical companies involved in lawsuits over the opioid crisis in the U.S. may agree to a settlement. They're accused of earning huge profits by distributing highly addictive opioid medications. Johnson & Johnson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, and McKesson could pay up to $26 billion to settle a wave of lawsuits. But NPR's Brian Mann says the companies may use a federal tax loophole to help cover some of the payments.
In financial filings, the firms also say they plan to declare those opioid payments as operating losses, which is a deduction, right? It's similar to one you or I might use if we want to pay less in our federal income taxes. So if they pay $26 billion, it looks like these 4 companies together would get roughly $4 billion back in tax benefits. That really angers some lawmakers.
NPR's Brian Mann prepared that report. This is NPR.
Good morning, it's 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. The state will begin vaccinating Floridians 60 and older starting Monday, March 15th. Governor Ron DeSantis made that announcement yesterday, saying now that more than half of the people 65 and older in nearly all of the state's major counties had been vaccinated, the time was right to include younger seniors. Republican Representative Scott Plakon says he's protecting the right to work and collective bargaining in Florida, but Democrats and labor unions don't agree. Plakon's proposal requires unions to confirm with members that they want dues deducted from their paychecks, and this would affect teachers, law enforcement, and other state workers. He says his bill is a response to unions pressuring people to sign up.
And we've heard anecdotal reports of certain social pressure that has gone on to stay in the union, and this will allow a private interaction between the employer and the employee that if they, for example, told the union representative, comes up, sign this form right now, that kind of thing, they can, in the privacy of their own home, change that with a text message.
His bill passed a House committee on a party line vote yesterday. Another proposal moving through the Florida legislature targets teachers' unions and would prevent dues from being deducted from paychecks. Warming up fast here in Jacksonville. It's now 57 degrees. 70 for this afternoon's high temperature. We're out for a sunny afternoon. This is WJCT.
For NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering Capital One Shopping, a downloadable browser extension that searches various sites for shoppers. What's in your wallet? More at CapitalOneShopping.com. And the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
How can Jacksonville protect itself from climate change? This is First Coast Connect. Good morning. I'm Brendan Rivers, sitting in for Melissa Ross. Thanks for listening. And just ahead, a big step forward for Jacksonville as City Hall looks to start taking action to address climate change. If you've got a question, give us a call at 549-2937. Again, that's 549-2937. But first this hour, the latest on the coronavirus pandemic. Yesterday, the Department of Health reported that statewide, the number of cases increased by 3,312 to 1,948,307. Active hospitalizations went up by 34 to 3,332. Deaths rose by 81 to 31,764. And 3,590,686 Floridians have had at least one dose of a vaccine. Speaking of vaccines, Governor DeSantis announced that starting March 15th, vaccine eligibility will expand to include anyone age 60 and older. That's down from 65. And now on to our main topic. The Jacksonville City Council's Special Committee on Resiliency has unanimously approved its final report, which outlines many of the threats climate change poses to Jacksonville and lays out recommended actions the city can take to protect itself. That comprehensive 90-plus page document will serve as the foundation for the work that will be done by the city's future Chief Resiliency Officer. Here now with more on what this all means are City Councilwoman Randy DeFore, Chair of the City Council Special Committee on Resiliency. Good morning, Councilwoman.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Adam Rosenblatt, a biology professor at the University of North Florida, a subject matter expert for the Resiliency Committee, and a co-founder of the Jacksonville chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Brendan.
And also joining us is Ashante Green, Supervisor, Duval Soil and Water Conservation District Group 4, subject matter expert for the Resiliency Committee, and outreach and communications coordinator for the advocacy group Resilient Jacks. Good morning, Ashante. Again, if you have questions for our panelists, give us a call. The number is 549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or just shoot us a message on Twitter and Facebook. Councilwoman DeFore, I'd like to start with you. The term resiliency gets tossed around a lot when people are talking about climate change and sea level rise, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as it would in other contexts. And one of the first things that this report does is establish a kind of working definition of the word for the committee's purposes. Can you explain what resiliency means in this context?
It really does mean it means how do we prepare for, prevent, recover from, and more equitably adapt for damage from chronic stressors. So it doesn't, to your point, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hurricane or sea level rise. It could be the COVID. Right, COVID is the pandemic itself falls into this definition. So it's a very broad definition. But how do we deal with it in such a way that we get back to what we would deem normal?
Okay, and Dr. Rosenblatt, as Councilman DeFore was pointing out, this idea of resiliency is about bouncing back and recovering from chronic stressors and also adverse events such as like hurricanes or something. So the stressors would be more long-term, like the pandemic or like sea level rise. So what are some of these chronic stressors and adverse events that you and your fellow committee members are worried about here in Jacksonville when we're talking specifically about climate change?
So a couple of the stressors have already been mentioned by Councilwoman DeFore. Sea level rise is certainly high on the list since we're a coastal city with a big river that runs right through downtown. Also, hurricanes. Hurricanes are projected to become stronger and drop more rainfall in the future. I mean, they're already doing that now relative to historical records, but that's going to get worse, or at least that's the projection. And then one that I'm personally very concerned about is heat, which is something that I feel like we don't talk about that much in Jacksonville, but the heat index and heat waves are projected to become more severe in the future, and that could present some really big problems for the city on top of other issues like sea level rise and hurricanes and flooding. So those are really the major ones.
Okay. And Ms. Green, so as Dr. Rosenblatt was saying, flooding, sea level rise, heat, those are some of the biggest threats that are posed by climate change here in Jacksonville. And a lot of times when we hear about things like hurricanes, the focus tends to be on flooded homes and damaged infrastructure. But as this final report explicitly points out, there is a societal cost as well. What is that societal cost, and why is it important to keep that in mind?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So just as Councilwoman DeFore and Dr. Rosenblatt attested to, oftentimes when we think of resiliency, we just think of flooding infrastructure, but in reality, there's also a stressor to keep in mind. Overall is social inequity and being sure that we are taking care of the communities that are most affected but have fewer resources to bounce back and be resilient. Throughout the report, we were as subject matter experts and everyone on the committee, we were very, very critical and made sure that we looked at it through the lens of just even considering environmental justice and the fact that social vulnerable populations should be considered when we look forward to initiatives with the city.
Okay, and Councilwoman DeFore, you've said that you kind of went into this committee without knowing that much about climate change and its impacts. And many of the subject matter experts that helped out with this process, including Ms. Green and Dr. Rosenblatt, are very knowledgeable on this issue. And everyone on the committee had to sit through several detailed presentations on the threats that climate change poses to Jacksonville and talking about some of the solutions that are available. So how has this committee process changed you, and what does it mean for you as an elected leader in this community?
I have to admit, it significantly changed me. I really look at the world differently after this whole process, and I do credit my subject matter experts for that. One of the things that we see on a daily basis is the fact that the river has gotten so high that literally it's coming out through the drainage systems. In other words, it's going through the drainage system up onto the streets. So we're seeing constant flooding even when it doesn't rain here. One of the things that I learned is the importance of the green infrastructure. So in other words, one tree can soak up 150 gallons a day. So that can absorb, we can do this in a way, we can have natural shorelines, there's so much that we can do just by planting trees and using natural resources and not building on wetlands that will make a huge difference in the future of our city.
Yeah, that seemed to be a big focus of this report, is really leaning into this idea of using green infrastructure and protecting the natural assets that Jacksonville already has available. Do you think that the other council members who are involved in this committee are kind of in the same boat where they're going to really start prioritizing this issue going forward?
Definitely the people that were on the resiliency committee. And what we have to do is, and one of the subcommittees was on this, community outreach and education. We need to educate the other city council members and the community as a whole on the importance of green infrastructure and what that could really mean in terms of not just beautification, but as Ashante shared with me, and she has a really powerful story about heat index and where she grew up in Jacksonville. There are things that we can do that just is a win-win all the way around, and that we need to make sure that we educate everyone on those points.
And Ashante, do you want to share a little bit about your personal experience with extreme heat, as Councilwoman DeFore was hinting at?
Sure, I'll just share a little bit. I grew up on the east side of Jacksonville. It's a community that's very rich in culture and vibrance. However, growing up, I always was interested in nature, but there wasn't a lot of green space or trees. It wasn't until adulthood that I really realized the impact on the environment and the health of people. So specifically when it comes to index, there are numerous studies out there that specifically looked at green infrastructure and specifically previously redline communities. Jacksonville is one of those previously redline communities, and it showed that communities just like Eastside, where I grew up, that has a weak tree canopy and more pervious or cement surfaces can show up to 10 degrees hotter on the same summer day than other communities in Jacksonville that has a higher tree canopy. So in reality, some of these communities, if we really don't take attention to green infrastructure, you can feel it in the heat, as well as a number of other things that we're speaking to when it comes to resiliency.
Okay, and again, listeners, if you have any questions for our panelists, please give us a call. That number again is 549-2937. Dr. Rosenblatt, we've talked a bit about green infrastructure and using natural resources. What are some of the other most important action steps as you see them that were laid out in this report?
So one big one is certainly updating, the planning process for the city when it comes to a couple different things. such as basically disaster preparedness. The city has a existing plan for how to deal with hurricanes, right? We're all familiar with hurricanes and the threats that they present to the city, but there's no plan in place for how to deal with the heat waves of the future that are going to be very severe and long-lasting, and present a real threat for public health. And so, one of the big things I see in this report is the recommendation that the city should develop one of these heat emergency plans. Another thing that the report suggests that I really agree with is that the threats of climate change, whatever they might be, but especially in terms of sea level rise and storm surge events, those scenarios need to be integrated into any kind of development process, right? Any kind of planning process. You take, for example, something like Lot J, right? What the report shows is that it is not really a great idea to proceed with development of these kinds of, riverfront, landmarks without taking into account the potential effects of sea level rise in the future, right? I mean, if you spend hundreds of millions of dollars building up these areas right next to the river, but then in, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they're just going to be regularly flooded as those areas are projected to be, then that might not be the best, use of public money. And so that sort of integration of the downtown planning process and our climate change knowledge really needs to become more, frequent.
And Ms. Green, as you pointed out, this report stresses the importance of community engagement in reaching diverse communities. It also recommends that the city establish a diverse community-based group or council to support the city's chief resiliency officer once they're hired. Do you feel that this committee and the advocacy group you represent, Resilient Jacks, are effectively engaging with Jacksonville's minority and low-income communities? And what can the city and advocacy groups like Resilient Jacks do to better engage with these communities?
So very good question. I think this was just a really good step and display of community engagement among the city. We did have a lot of subject matter experts that knew the work and was very passionate in regards to equity and community engagement. Community organizations like Resilient Jacks was created with an intent and a passion to solve a problem and provide resources. It is to complement the work that the city is already doing and make sure that it's resilient for everyone. So I think ultimately, looking at the recommendations of the report and making sure that the CRO is implementing a lot of great recommendations we made in the Outreach and Communications Department, it'll ensure that we are looking at diversity through that lens. And as a whole, as the Outreach Communications Coordinator for Resilient Jacks, it's just pretty much about being intentional about inclusion and having conversations and going into communities and inviting people that you might not have heard from, because as a lot of statistics show, and as we spoke about, a lot of these communities that aren't necessarily at the climate table needs to be engaged and needs to be aware of their resources, because oftentimes they're the most affected and have very little resources to bounce back and be resilient.
Okay, we do have a caller on the line. We have John Burr, who many of you may be familiar with, and he was very heavily involved with this committee as well. Good morning, John. How are you doing?
Good, Brandon. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. This is a topic close to my heart.
I know it is. So what did you want to add to this conversation, John?
Well, the study and the efforts are a great first step, but now the city needs to move forward to taking steps to eliminate greenhouse gases. Move on to the cause of climate change, not just the effect.
Yes. Thank you for adding that. So Councilwoman DeFore, that was actually one of the recommendations in this report was to start an inventory of Jacksonville's greenhouse gas emissions and to start finding ways to reduce those. So I want to get your take on that, but also there are several preemption bills that the state legislature is considering this year, and one would even prohibit local governments from regulating greenhouse gas emissions. Do you worry that if preemption bills like this are passed, it would make it harder for Jacksonville to start dealing with climate change? Councilwoman DeFore, we still have you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm not in favor of losing local control on any issue, and especially our daily. I mean, as it relates to environmentally, I can't imagine. We're surrounded by water. Not every community in the state is surrounded to the extent that we are, and we should be able to control that.
Okay.
Our building processes and the greenhouses and all that. We should be in control.
Okay. Also, Councilwoman DeFore, where is the city now in the process of hiring a chief resilience officer?
It has been, and I think that's probably one. If we were to talk about it's the first step, but one of the biggest successes, in fact, that we did get past the chief resiliency officer position. It had been funded in the budget, but it had not been a detailed position, and that was one of the results of this committee. And they're in the process right now. It's been posted, and so we're hopeful that someone will be hired in a very short future.
Okay, and once we have someone in that position, what are the next steps? And to get to John's point, will addressing greenhouse gas emissions become a priority?
I think that the environmental, all of it will become a priority. And when we talk about sea level rise, that usually, that all is done on the coastline. So we have a lot of work to do as it relates to the river itself. And what does that mean in terms of flooding? So I think I'm sure this chief resiliency officer is going to look at all the elements of environmental concerns in terms and how that's going to relate to our community and what changes we need to make in terms of code enforcement, building requirements, all that.
Okay, and Dr. Rosenblatt and Ms. Green, you're both actively involved in climate advocacy groups. And I'm sure we have a number of listeners today who are worried about climate change but don't necessarily know what they can do about it as an individual. Can you tell them what steps they can take and what they should do if they're interested in the organizations you're involved with? Dr. Rosenblatt, let's have you take this first.
Yeah, there's a number of local organizations that are doing some really great work on climate change. The one that I'm personally involved with is Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a national nonprofit, nonpartisan group, and we have a chapter here in Jacksonville that was started a couple of years ago. And what Citizens Climate Lobby does is it organizes people to talk to our members of Congress, right, at the federal level, and try to convince them to, pass common sense climate legislation, like, putting a price on carbon, which is something that lots of economists agree would be the fastest way and the most efficient way to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. So, you can get involved with Citizens Climate Lobby. If you just, Google Citizens Climate Lobby, you'll come to the homepage. And if you join up, then your information will be sent to the local Jacksonville chapter, and we will reach out to you and help you get involved however you might want to do that. And then there's also, not to preempt Ashante, but, Ashante's organization, Resilient Jacks, that's another local organization that is helping to educate people and to organize people to take action on this issue.
Yeah, and Ashante, before we go to you, I do want to once again remind our listeners that if you have any questions for our panelists, you can give us a call at 549-2937. So, Ms. Green, go ahead. Tell us about your group and how you think people can get involved.
Yeah, so as an elected official for Duval Soil and Water Conservation District, we deal with a lot of environmental issues as a whole. So you can engage with Duval Soil and Water Conservation District on our website, duvalsoilandwater.com, as well as all social media platforms. And then we have a meeting every third Wednesday of the month. But who I'm here representing today, as well as Resilient Jacks, as Dr. Rosenblatt attested to. That website is resilientjacks.org, and on all social media platforms, it's Resilient Jacks. So what Resilient Jacks is pretty much a coalition of numerous organizations working towards bettering our environment and climate change. Actively, they pretty much work together to propel equity and proactive solutions to address the causes and the effects of climate change throughout the Northeast Florida through advocacy, education, and community engagement. So that's a great place to start because a number of the organizations in the coalition, down to Groundworks Jax, down to Sierra Club and St. John's Riverkeeper, are actively involved in our meetings and share collective resources. So as a citizen, I encourage you to engage in all ways and look for opportunities just as this. The city reached out to a number of people that were doing the work to be subject matter experts and give advice. So there are recommendations in the report for the CRO to have continued technical experts and outreach. So I do anticipate that there'll be a lot of opportunities to engage as a citizen moving forward.
Okay, and we do have another caller on the line. Good morning. We got Cynthia from Lake Shore. Cynthia, what is your question? You there, Cynthia?
Yes.
Go ahead. What did you want to ask our panelists?
Oh, I wanted to say that I noticed that the question about the greenhouse gas, how to control that was not really addressed too much. And I know that by protecting green spaces and creating more green spaces, that can offset what we already have. And I don't know whether people realize that concrete itself creates a lot of greenhouse, fumes, and that the more concrete we have, then the more greenhouse exhaust we will have. So protecting green spaces and planting trees are two of the things that can be done to help with that.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, and the report, as we said, green space is a huge emphasis in this report, and it really does say that the city should incorporate that into its plans to both make the city more resilient to the effects of climate change and to help sequester carbon, so that would help reduce emissions. We are running out of time here, but Councilwoman DeFore, I wanted to toss it back to you for a few minutes to see if you have any closing thoughts on this committee process and this final report.
I appreciate that. It was an incredible opportunity to work with our community. We have so many subject matter experts. It was overwhelming at times to see the extent of expertise we had in local knowledge. And we need to rely on that. I mean, I can tell you that this Chief Resiliency Officer will have a lot of expertise, but probably not to the extent the two panelists that you have today. I mean, so the conversation must continue. And this is a nonpartisan issue. You can look out your windows, you can see for yourself that the river is higher after Irma than it was before Irma. And we must come together as a community to address these issues.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Councilwoman DeFore. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Rosenblatt, pleasure as always. Thank you for being on First Coast Connect this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And Ms. Green, a pleasure. Thank you for contributing to this conversation this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, later, our First Coast Connect book club selection for March. But up next, Hubbard House's economic empowerment programs for survivors of domestic violence. Welcome back. Before she left, Melissa spoke with Hubbard House's CEO, Gail Patton, about the organization's economic empowerment programs for survivors of domestic violence in Duval and Baker counties. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
Hi, Gail. Good to talk to you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And, you know, with March being Women's History Month, I'm eager to talk with you about the mission of Hubbard House, which has an incredible history in Jacksonville. Tell us about Hubbard House.
Well, Hubbard House is the agency in Jacksonville and also provides services for Baker County as well as Duval for survivors of domestic violence and their families. And we provide many different services, but most people know about our shelter, which is where people who are in the most lethal situation due to domestic violence come for safe shelter. And then within the walls, they get a lot of options of what they can participate in. So whether it's counseling, job coaching, helping them move out when it's time to go into affordable housing. In addition, we do crisis intervention with the adults and children as well. And then we also have our outreach programs at the courthouse, our own outreach building on Beach Boulevard, which is co-located with our thrift store. And we have programs where we go into communities and do education, workplaces, schools, and different civic organizations. We're trying to just reach out to everybody that we can to let them know that there is help and hope available.
And needed in this pandemic now more than ever, because for many people around this community, they might be locked into a home or apartment with an abusive partner and might not have a workplace or somewhere else to go.
Exactly. What we have found out is that the incidences of domestic violence have increased during the pandemic because of those reasons you just mentioned. People are working from home or they've lost their job and are actually in financial crisis, and now they're literally trapped with their abuser, and all those places that we normally might go to get help if we're in that situation. Like if we go to work, we might get help when we're there, or if we go out to the store, we might get help on the way there. We aren't going out and doing that as much. So people are not only spending more time with the abuser in their home, their resources and ways that they can get help aren't as plentiful as they used to be. And so it really creates a position where survivors are finding themselves in a lot of lethal situations.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the various types of abuse. There are different kinds of abuse. There's physical abuse, of course, but there's also other ways people try to coercively control their partner. Financial abuse is something that I know you wanted to talk about.
I definitely wanted to talk about financial abuse because people don't often think about that, but now during the pandemic when people have lost their jobs, we're talking about the abuser using the finances of the family to control the survivor and to keep them without any options. So they can go about this in many different ways. Sometimes it is actually prohibiting the survivor from getting a job, and when they do, actively doing things to sabotage the job, such as going to their work site or calling them all of the time, or if a person has a job, actually requiring them to give over all of their money to them when they get paid and only giving them an allowance, so to speak, to get what they need for the household. And then they also oftentimes will actually ruin the credit of the survivor, because we all know that one key to being able to make independent choices for yourself is being able to support yourself financially. And if you aren't able to do that because your credit's been compromised because of the abuser, or because you don't have a job where you can sustain you and your children on your own, then that abuser has more control over you. And it's always there with the promise and the threat of physical violence as well.
So how does Hubbard House help people break free of those kinds of financially tough situations, in addition to providing shelter and counseling and all of the other things that you do?
We have a couple of programs that address that. One is our COACH program, which stands for Creating Opportunities and Career Help, where our advocate meets with survivors and asks them what do they want to do with their job or their career. For some, they have to start at the very basics, saying I need to finish and get my GED, or I need to get some training, CNA training or welding training or some type of training so that they can pursue their dreams. So our person works, just hand in hand with them to help them access those things that they need to get where they want to go with their goals for work. Additionally, people may have jobs that they love, but they want to advance in that career. So they help them formulate plans to do that. And it can be as simple as helping somebody fill out an application, or it could also include helping somebody fill out an application, doing mock interviews with them, linking them with companies that are linked with Hubbard House who are looking for employees. So all those different things that it takes to get a job, we can help somebody with in this program. And additionally, to address financial independence, we have a program where we help people learn to repair their credit and do some just very basic financial literacy with them, helping them understand why credit is important and how can we help them repair that credit so that they don't have that hanging over their head, because so much of access to different things is based on our credit history for everybody. So working with that. And then we also have a program where we provide housing assistance to help people move away from the abuser. And you know as well as I do just the high cost of housing right now. And it's very difficult for a survivor to go from being dependent on an abuser to then going and renting an apartment on their own for themselves and their children. So what we do is we work with them and give them assistance with rent, and this has to do with, so for the first, we work with them for a year in this program. The first 3 months, we pay 100% of the rent, and then it goes down every 3 months by 25%. So by the end of the year, they're paying the rent on their own, but also during that year, while we're assisting with the rent, we're also helping them with their job skills, with overcoming those barriers that come up when you're living on your own for the first time, helping them figure out transportation, child care issues, what to do when your landlord's not responding the way your landlord needs to respond. And then we also are at the very beginning of working with survivors on how to buy their own homes and helping them understand what things they can do, what programs they might be eligible for first-time home ownership, because there is so much more security in owning your own home. And oftentimes, as you know, the mortgage is cheaper than paying rent in places, and you're building your own equity. So you're building some equity for you and for your generations to come. So, just looking at all those different options of helping people with their finances so that they can have real choices in their lives.
So important. Let's quickly mention that registration is open right now for your Hubbard House 12th Annual Domestic Violence Walk coming up March 27th. Stand Up and Stride.
Yes, and we really encourage everybody to come out who feels safe to come out. All of us, I think, are itching to get out of the house, and we are going to make sure that we're following all the CDC guidelines, and it's going to be an opportunity for you to show your support for survivors, to help get the message out about survivors, and really, a way to come together, socially distanced, in our wonderful weather we have in Jacksonville for a really great cause. So, as you said, March 27th, you can go on hubbardhouse.org to register. It starts at 8:30. We would really welcome everybody to come out and show their support.
Check it out. Thank you so much, Gail Patton, CEO at Hubbard House, for all you do. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
This month's First Coast Connect book club selection is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Stacey Goldring, our facilitator, joins us now to explain why you'll love this book if you enjoy mysteries and whodunits. So, Stacey, tell us about Collins for people who may not be familiar with him or his work.
Well, Wilkie Collins is considered the grandfather of detective fiction. And what's so amazing is if you are a fan of anything from Miss Marple to Star Trek, Wilkie Collins has influenced the way those stories are told, which is incredibly, who knew, something revealed by learning about literature. But Brendan, what is even more interesting is I was just listening, to the prior segment, and this story, A Woman in White, is incredibly relevant to the subject of how women are treated, because in this story we have a woman who is stripped of her identity, and is accused of having mental issues and is not treated well. And it's a story of trying to secure one's identity and stand up for oneself as a woman and as someone who has rights and someone who really wants to have a full life. And he was so incredibly ahead of the curve on this. And on top of that, it is a whodunit. You're on the edge of your seat, turning every page in the reading A Woman in White, trying to figure out who is this person. And you get to hear perspectives from every one of the characters involved. So I don't know if you like stories where each chapter is told from a different voice, but that is what A Woman in White offers us. And it is also insight to how novels are structured today. So by reading this book and his other classic called The Moonstone, you'll have all these aha moments if you think about any of your favorite detective books or film or television shows that you watch today.
And why did you choose this specific work over his other works? What makes this special in his collection of books?
Right, that's a very good question. Those two are his standouts. I do recommend both, but there was something about this book, I think it came before The Moonstone, so I wanted to read that one, and I wanted to present it first, and I actually will be discussing this along with Cindy Edelman during our literature program that we do at the Comer on February 23rd. It's a free program. And she's going to be talking about Symphony in White by Whistler. So we have Collins, Woman in White, and we have the painting, Symphony in White, and it is Women's History Month. And it's this whole idea, Brendan, as white, and what that represents and what that hides, and the revelations that are behind this whole idea of, the blank page. So it's an incredibly powerful book. It's considered a sensation novel. So that whole idea of you and I, as we read a book, we trust that author, that we're going to be on the edge of our seat, but we know in the end it's going to be okay, or we'll have some resolution. Whereas in real life, as what's going on today, we don't even know what tomorrow is going to bring. So it's a way of finding solace in literature by being able to identify with that tension, but know in the end that we will have resolution. I won't tell you what happens at the end of the book, but there is resolution. Which is something that we don't always get in real life. You may not like the resolution, but you know that there is a last page, and that's what's so satisfying about reading literature and finding solace in these crazy times.
And I'm not familiar with Symphony in White. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I would imagine there must be some pretty strong parallels there with the similarity in those titles.
There are, and the idea with Whistler is a lot of his artwork he expressed using expressions that you would find in musical, in musical vocabulary, and it just like Collins' work and Whistler's work were new. They were a different way of expressing and telling a story and composing an artwork. And to learn more about that, of course, I hope you'll join Cindy and myself when we go in depth about this. But I also wanted to bring up something else that I find that is worrisome to me about what we're noticing right now in literature and art overall. And this is this idea of canceling out or deciding not to read something because you may find that it goes against the grain. And my worry is, like A Woman in White, at some point, if we decide that we don't want to read things that challenge us, we're going to have nothing but pages and books that are nothing but blank and white. And we're going to go into museums and see nothing on the wall but, Benjamin Moore, white paint. So I love being challenged by books like this and artwork like this, because it makes us challenge and think about what was going on during those time periods and what those parallels are to today, and how we can learn from that by either writing books or creating artwork that are in reaction to what we've read, or by expressing something new, being inspired by the written word.
Okay, and before we run out of time here, can you again tell us a little bit about this event? When is it going to be, and if people are interested, how they can get a ticket or get in?
Yeah, of course. So it's a free event. It's at the Cummer, February 23rd at 7 p.m. It's a hybrid program. Well, I wish it was hybrid. It's a virtual program, and you can go to bookclub@wjct.org or just visit the Cummer website and sign up for the Litter Archer series. And this particular program is called Comfortably Mysterious. So this entire season, we're exploring British literature and how these classics bring us some type of joy and happiness during these very interesting times in which we presently live.
Okay, and so for people who like this kind of book, like The Woman in the White, these mysteries and these whodunits, are there any other specific books in this genre that you would recommend?
Wilkie Collins has an incredible incredible. You have library shelves dedicated to this man and his type of writing. But of course, if you are familiar with Sherlock Holmes, there is no doubt that there is a direct line from A to B regarding Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. And I would also recommend that you do not watch any version of this on film before you read the book, because that'll really ruin it for you. So I suggest staying away from Woman in White and The Moonstone. They're on Prime, they're on Netflix, etc. Until after you read the book, because the unfolding of the storytelling, it just, film is just a very different medium, and they have to tell the story very differently. But I would suggest any other mystery, pick up an Agatha Christie. You're going to find elements. You will find clues that Wilkie Collins also was there.
Okay, and before we run out of time here, I think you said the event was on February 23rd. Did you mean March 23rd?
Oh, did I? Yes, I did. Where did February go? Hello? Where did come on. At least someone is in charge. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
February's gone. Poof, gone. Yes, I did. Yeah, I meant March.
It's a short month.
Yes,
so
it
March
was.
23rd at 7.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Of
7
course.
p.m. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning, Stacy.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. You're listening to First Coast Connect. This is WJCT News, 89.9 Jacksonville.
There's a change coming. We might feel we're all alone. We can't do this on our own. This is something worth fighting for. If we're brave, we won't regret. And we can't let the world forget. We won't take this anymore. No. Be the change you want to see.
55 years ago, the Voting Rights Act passed. Today, the rollback of voting laws shows the legislation is hanging by a thread. Van Newkirk of The Atlantic joins us to talk about how the bill was originally passed and what might happen if it again lands at the Supreme Court's door. That's next time on Think. Tonight at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
South by Southwest would normally kick off right around now down in Austin, Texas. Going to be online this year, which is less.
What's the point? I mean, I can see a name on a Zoom call, but I know nothing about that person other than that they're there.
I'm Kai Rizdal. Can it and we survive another year of virtual events? Talk about that next time on Marketplace.
Tonight at 6, here on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, Katie Engelhardt, author of a new book about the right to die and how that's played out in states and countries that have right to die laws, in the clandestine groups on the internet known as the Euthanasia Underground, and in families where one member asks another for help in hastening death. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Is killing nature a criminal act? 75 years after crimes against humanity and genocide were coined at Nuremberg, work's now started on defining a new crime, ecocide. We'll meet one of the lawyers making the case for this term to be recognized in international law. Could it ever work? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, as we mentioned earlier, it's Women's History Month, and PS27 Ventures is celebrating by hosting its 6th annual Female Founders Forum virtually this Friday. The forum's goal is to inspire women to pursue entrepreneurship and to create a community of female entrepreneurs who want to sharpen their leadership skills. Christine Caven of PS27 Ventures is on the line now with details. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning, Brendan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So for those of us who may not be so familiar with PS27 Ventures, can you explain what it is that you do?
Sure. So PS27 Ventures is a Jacksonville-based venture capital firm that invests in early-stage entrepreneurs, and we are specifically passionate about investing in female entrepreneurs. We've been doing the Female Founders Forum program for the past 6 years, and we're excited to bring it back this Friday, March 12th.
And how many of the founders in PS27's portfolio are female?
So right now we have about 36% of our female-founded companies. You know, back when I started at the firm about 6 years ago, we had only one woman founder in our portfolio, and we saw a need for more women in the community to feel confident sharing their pitches with us. So we're proud to say that, you know, we've grown a lot since 6 years ago and that the program is working. Our goal is to reach 50% of female founders in our portfolio by 2025. So in our pipeline, we're already seeing deals come in that are 50% men and 50% women. So we're excited to share that the program is working because as we see the numbers, you know, female founders are just not funded quite as often as male founders. And at PS27, it's important for us to make sure that we have a diverse portfolio because we live in a diverse world.
So tell us a little bit about this forum and why you think it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hold the forum each year in celebration of International Women's Day. And this year, PS27 and Deloitte have teamed up to present a day filled with inspirational female founders. So we like to give women an opportunity to share their story. We have Janelle Toothman with NextGen Biologics, Lisa Baer with Quavantis, Vitri Wilson of Brasilia, and Ali Felix of Tampa Bay's Embark Collective moderating an entrepreneur panel. We also want to give local women the stage to share their stories as well. We have Whitney Meyer, who is the VP of Diversity at the University of North Florida, Kay Johnson, who is a PS27 board member and with the Tolling Group. And, you know, we're just really excited to give these women an opportunity to share their story and inspire entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, women who are working in corporate roles that are focused on innovation, an opportunity to come together and really create a network so that way everyone can achieve success and wealth in their businesses.
And who can participate in this event and how can they go about getting involved?
So this event is open to anyone. Tickets are $13 and students can also attend for free with their .edu email addresses and the code STUDENT at checkout. Tickets are going to be available on our website until Thursday at 9 p.m. this week. And our website is ps27ventures.com/FFF. And that's where you can get tickets. The event is going to take place this Friday, March 12th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we're really excited to bring it back in 2021 digitally. Historically, we've had this event in person, but this is the first time we're going virtual with digital booths, a private networking group, and a VIP website access that the attendees will get to have where they can learn more about our speakers and also gain access to some of the service providers that PS27 works with.
And are there any specific speakers for this event that you're especially excited about?
Oh, my favorite, I would say, on the list is Suzanne Yoon, the CEO and founder of Kinsey Capital Partners. Just what she's done in starting her own capital firm is just really inspiring. She's a delight to speak with, and just really excited to have all of these women on the ticket. So I can't wait for Friday. Really looking forward to it.
All right. And any other aspects of this event that you're especially excited about?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's just so much that goes into planning for this event. We start the year prior and really thinking about who would be a good fit for this event, who's raised capital, and just being able to hear these women come together and share their story on how they went from, just being a little girl and having big dreams and big ideas, and then coming to the stage and be able to relay those back to the next generation of entrepreneurs. It's just a really inspiring day that I look forward to each year. I've been a part of the planning process since the very first event at our office, when we had just a small round table of women with Dolores Kessler discussing her journey, and it's grown each year to 100 to 200, and this year we're excited to break that 200 number digitally and reach women entrepreneurs from all over the world. So it's been a really inspiring event to be a part of, and to see the community come together to support women in entrepreneurship. It's just been a joy to plan, and we also thankfully have a great sponsor, Deloitte, who's been there every step of the way, helping us make this event the best that it can be. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, pretty exciting growth there. What else does PS27 have in the works?
Oh, we have programs throughout the year that we do for entrepreneurs. In the fall each year, we host Leadership Week. So that's one of the things that you can look for coming in October. And next year, we're also planning on doing a Black Entrepreneurs Forum, very similar to the Female Founders Forum. We're going to be doing that in the summer of 2022. So we're really looking forward, once everyone can get vaccinated and get back to doing in-person events. But we're thrilled to host virtual while we can, and really, of course, always investing in entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur out there that has a big idea, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at ps27ventures.com and submit your pitch deck for a hands-on review. Our team is always looking to invest in entrepreneurs who have big ideas in SaaS, e-commerce, health technology, and companies that are focused on sustainability. Those are really the big areas we focus on. So, we're busy always helping entrepreneurs in our portfolio.
Christine,
and also
sorry,
building community.
we're coming out. Running out of time here. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry to cut you off. That's our show. I'm Brendan Rivers, sitting in for Melissa Ross, and you're listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.